Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and welcome to our June event with Sam Silverstein and Tara Stone. What we wanted to visit with you today is the formal topic is around tariffs. Now, we are not here to discuss political issues around tariffs, but what we want to explore and what I really want to explore with Sam and Tara is, given the volatility that has occurred since the announcements of the tariffs, how can a corporate culture impact a company's ability to navigate really any volatile business situation? So yes, the volatility is caused by tariffs, but it could be any situation. And what really intrigued me about this issue was I couldn't think of a more stark issue where we had a defined time frame of volatility where tariffs were put in place, they were suspended or removed. Tariffs were put in place, they were suspended or removed. So we've had multiple series of volatility or steps. And I wanted to explore with, as I said, with Sam and Tara, is there a way that corporate culture, your assessment of corporate culture, your monitoring and improvement of corporate culture can help you navigate volatility? So guys, I hope I framed the issue sufficiently. And Sam, let me just start with you. What does volatility mean for corporate culture?
Tom, it's great to be here again. And Tara and I love these conversations because it reveals really for leaders the critical nature of organizational culture. Volatility, culture is right there at the very center of being able to deal with volatility. Anytime there's and go back to the pandemic because that's a perfect example. It couldn't be more volatile than that. Tara and I work with organizations on a global basis, helping them create sustainable, high-performance workplace culture. Whenever there's volatility, whenever there's challenges, whenever there are things that are going on that are beyond our and leaders' control, our phone seems to ring off the hook. These organizations, they have problems, they need help. And all of a sudden, they find themselves in a position where they could have alleviated it if they looked at their culture in advance. The time to deal with challenges are not during the tough times. The time to deal with and prepare for challenges are when times are good. So when times are smooth and times are somewhat stable, that's when we need to get our culture in order, because it is the culture that will help us get through the tough times, because a great culture will attract and retain great people. Great people will come up with solutions, and you'll be able to deal with those tough times.
Wow, there was so much you put in there, Sam. The first thing I'm going to point out is during the time of volatility is not the time you want to be working on your culture. You want to work on your culture continuously so that you can respond to economic volatility, to a workforce volatility, to climate volatility, whatever it is. Tara, from your perspective, what's the role of trust in navigating volatility?
It all comes down to trust and communication. And volatility, to me, is just change, right? Some change is thrust upon us, and some change we bring on ourselves. And it all comes down to the leaders, whether they're the titled leaders or the people that naturally show up as leaders in the companies. Everyone is looking to them for clarity and communication and how they are reacting. Are they reacting in chaos, or are they bringing calm? And in order for your people to trust you, they have to know that you're going to run to the fire with them. They have to know that you are aware of what's going on, that you are standing beside them. And I think what's really important is that for leaders, that no one is expecting you to have all of the answers, especially in a volatile time where, as you mentioned, first the tariffs come in, then they're changed, and then they're gone. Every day there's something different. So if as a leader, you can get clarity and communicate early and often with your people, hey, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's what we're watching, and then keep that communication consistent, your people will trust that you're going to have their back and that no matter what comes down the line, you're going to work together to have success through it and most often come out even better on the other side. Sam mentioned about culture, and culture's like character. If you only have good character during easy times, then we would challenge what kind of character do you have? So culture's the same thing. If you only live your culture during good times, what kind of culture do you truly have? And these opportunities become gifts to really press on the culture, see how embedded it is, see where you need to speak it more and act it more and live it further and deeper in the company. And then it doesn't matter what's happening. Volatile times, good times, your people trust you. They know that they can communicate with you. You communicate with them. That's how companies have high performance cultures. And really take the market share from the companies that don't during these volatile times. These are the times to grow.
Absolutely. That's an important aspect, Tara, because every time there's like a downturn in the economy and people are going, "Oh, the economy's bad, sales are off, blah blah blah." We see these organizations that thrive, that do incredibly well, and it's in these turbulent times that the best organizations, the organizations that really have this high performance culture, they're going to thrive and they're going to just take everyone else out to the whipping shed. And so that culture becomes even more important. It's not just about making it through the tough times. These are times where your organization can actually move up in competition and be industry leaders where maybe you haven't been in the past.
Tara, I really like the way you framed this at the start of your remarks by saying volatility is change.
Mm.
And we always know we're going to have change in business. Volatility may mean extraordinary change or more change than we're used to, but it's just change. And by defining it that way, you've given us a reference point or home base that we can touch that we all understand and that you can communicate with your employees around the issue of volatility by saying it's change. Why is it so important to break down what I thought was going to be a complex topic to something as basic as change?
It's so important because of what you just reiterated, right? Change is always happening. You're either dead and dying or green and growing. We really don't believe in a real neutral spot. So change is something to be embraced, yet it's really feared by most people. And the fear comes from unknowing. So whether it's change or something's happening outside of you or inside of you personally or business, that fear really, we're seeing that happen right now with the tariffs, where companies, they don't want to make decisions, they don't know what pricing is going to look like, they're not communicating it to their people internally, they're not communicating it to their vendors and their people externally, and everyone goes into freeze mode. It's a very natural human instinct. Fight or flight, freeze. It's like if you're driving down the road, we've got deer where I am here in New Jersey, a deer's in your headlights, they need to get out of the way, but what do? They freeze because they're in so much fear. And we don't want to be those deer in the headlights. So what do we need to do? We need to look at, okay, what are we afraid of? Because I also don't believe in fearlessness. You feel the fear, you acknowledge it, and you go ahead and you take action anyway. So this is where courage comes in. This is where being brave comes in. And that all ties to a safe environment, a safe emotional environment. Again, responsibility of the leader. Have I created a safe emotional environment where my people can ask questions? And I'll go back to Sam, but we work with the university, with the institute, with the accountable leader terms of change, because we know that people understand and embrace change differently depending on what their personality style is. So we have a format and a framework that we use with all of our clients to really keep it simple, Tom. Like, we overcomplicate things so much that if we just could keep things simple, doesn't make it easy, but it does make it simple. So we have frameworks for that. And I think we need to acknowledge when there's fear and challenges and communicate through that. I don't know if
I
that answers
think
your
there's
question.
something
Yeah.
I think there's something foundational here also, Tara and
Yeah.
Tom, that is, what are we focusing on? Because
Mm.
if we focus on those things that we cannot control, that's when fear comes in. It's, oh my gosh, the economy's down. What am I going to do? Oh my gosh, we had a tornado. We can't control those things. All we can do is control how we're going to act and how we're going to react. So when we focus on what we cannot control, fear comes in, we get bogged down, we don't make decisions, which is what you were saying, Tara. And when we don't make decisions, we don't move ahead. If we focus on what we can control, we make decisions, we move forward. That's why some companies in turbulent times, they get stuck and they don't move ahead, which means they're going to move back, because there's going to be those companies that move forward. If Tara moves forward, I'm moving back. It's very difficult if we were competing against each other for that relationship not to happen. And so when leaders understand what they can control, when they focus on what they can control, then they make decisions, fear is eliminated, they move forward. And back to where you started, Tom, what they can control is what the culture is. That a leader has absolute control over. It just, do they abdicate control, or do they retain that control and do the things necessary to have that ideal culture?
Sam, I know you've been a businessman. I know you've had a manufacturing company. You've obviously had to worry about customer sales. You've had to worry about raw materials, vendors in your supply chain. You've had to worry about employees. You've had to worry about manufacturing processes, safety. So when you were a business leader, you had a lot on your plate. How does accountability help a leader navigate through extraordinary change that we've defined as volatility?
Most listeners will think of accountability as a way of doing, that it's about getting more done. Accountability isn't leadership trying to manipulate people to do more for them. Accountability, in reality, is not a tactical issue. It's a relational conversation. It's a way of thinking, not a way of doing. It's how you think about your people. So when leaders recognize that they are both accountable for the people they lead and accountable to the people they lead, that this is a stewardship relationship, when leaders truly take that on, they see their people differently, they treat them differently, they build different relationships. Communication looks different. Back to what Tara was talking about with change, they communicate in a way where people understand change. Transparency is rampant, trust grows, and now what happens is that you have a relationship with your people where your people are willing to do things they would not have otherwise done. So accountability, when leaders take on accountability, they create this environment, this culture where people will go through brick walls for them because they know the leader is going to go through a brick wall for them. And so it becomes reciprocal. Accountability is at the very bedrock of dealing with turbulent times. Accountability is at the very bedrock of building this culture that attracts and retains the best people.
How can this accountability assist in building trust, which would allow an employee perhaps to bring forward a proposed solution to volatile work situation? How about that part of it, Sam?
So accountability is keeping your commitments to people. We're not talking about the tactical commitments. We're talking about relational commitments. A relational commitment is something like, I commit to live the values, I commit to honesty, I commit to stand by you when all hell breaks loose, I commit to a safe space. We've identified 10 that exist in highly accountable leaders and organizations with the best workplace culture. And so if you're committed to a safe place as a leader, then what that means is that everyone has a voice, everyone is heard, that when people share things that they're responded to. So in an organization where I know that I'm heard, I'm going to be willing to voice my opinion and to share my thoughts and inputs and ideas. I don't care whether you have 10 employees or 10,000 or 100,000. These are brains that can solve problems. And if the leader of the organization thinks that they know it all and they're going to solve all the problems, that's the organization I want out of. And you either create an environment where people are heard and they feel safe in sharing, or you don't. And that's where accountability comes in. The accountable leader is always going to create that environment that honors people, that values people, where they know they have a voice and they will eagerly share. And when they do that, then there is just a plethora of ideas of how to deal with the situation. And one or more of those ideas are going to hit home and are going to make a difference, Tom.
Tara, Sam said a little bit earlier that you don't work on building trust and accountability in the middle of a volatile situation. You work on it when it's not, so that you can draw upon that great resource when something does come up in the economic world. How do you help companies build that trust, or I guess create that trust and build that trust with employees so that they can tap into the vast knowledge of literally every employee?
Yeah. Sam's exactly right. You want to build that outside of times of volatility. That's the ideal time. He loves when I say he's right. But the second best time,
Yeah, you can say that you can say that all day, Tara. I appreciate that. Thank you.
the
Well
second
done.
best time to build it is right now. And if right now happens to be in a time of volatility, then embrace it and bring it in and really put your culture, your core values to the test. And that's the key right there, is the core values. If you haven't worked on the core values previous to a time, then right now is time to really get purposeful and block out time with your people to look at what are the things that we make decisions, what are the filters that we make all of our decisions from, what's important to us. So we'll often see companies try to band-aid solutions. They'll start throwing training in, they'll start throwing more meetings in, but what they're overlooking is what the foundation is for the company and for their people. What is a culture by design versus a culture by default? And that starts with identifying what the company's non-negotiable core values are. No matter what the time is, if we say we operate with integrity, that's not just when materials are inexpensive. If they get expensive, we still operate with integrity. Now, it doesn't mean that things don't change, policies don't change, but it all comes back to core values. And we have found through our work that not only non-negotiable core values for the company itself, but then helping each person within the company understand what their own personal core values are. And that's how they tie it back to the company. And that's how they're able to come into work every day, make empowered decisions, knowing that as long as they make decisions aligned with the company's core values, that their leaders are going to protect them and support them, even if it's a wrong decision sometimes. We might need to correct it really quickly, but that's how you do it. And I don't care. You can apply whatever else you want to on top of it. If you don't rewind all the way back to the core values, to me, you're kind of just band-aiding and running on a hamster wheel. And at some point in time, you're going to have to go there. So let's do it now, even if it's a scary time. Get the flashlight out and start shining on the dark.
Tom, it's as an attorney, you can understand this, I'm sure. But my oldest daughter is also an attorney, and she took a position at a fairly large firm out of law school, and she went to this firm because of this one gentleman that headed up the tax division, and she had worked with that individual in a summer internship, and she got to know him, and she really connected with what he stood for in life and in the world of law and practicing as an attorney. Now, some things at this firm kind of got goofed up, and he realized that it wasn't a fit for him, and he left and went to another firm. My daughter also left and went to the same firm he went to because she wanted to be aligned with the values that he had. He was a mentor for her, and not just in the legal world, but how to be an attorney with a set of values. And so a great set of values as an individual and as an organization, which define the culture, will always attract the right people and the best people. So if you want to build trust, it starts with the individual living a set of values consistently. And it's the inconsistency that erodes trust. It's the consistency that builds trust.
That really brings up an interesting point I wanted to explore with you all. There can be multiple leaders within a company. So, for instance, when I worked at a large multinational energy services company with 75,000 employees worldwide, I never met the CEO. I might have been able to identify him, maybe, but I worked for my manager, and my manager was my boss, and he was my leader. How can you take these concepts and move them down an organization so that a supervisor, a manager, or a director who is a leader of their group has those same values that the top could or should have?
I'm not sure where you're directing that, but if I'm going to go back to the first time we met face to face, Tom, and we were at an industry meeting, and there was a room with several hundred people in it, and there was a panel up on stage, and one of these leaders said that the challenge is never at the senior level, the challenge is at the mid level, which is what you're talking about. And when I spoke that afternoon, I opened with the challenge is never at the mid level, the challenge is always at the senior level, because if the mid-level leader is not living the values, that's the responsibility of the senior leader. And yes, it does need to cascade down, but the CEO sets the standard for the executive team, and the executive team then sets the standard for the next level. And that CEO better be out there talking to people and better be building relationships. And if they're just staying in their ivory tower, then they're not being a great CEO. Leadership is not just about the tactics of the business. It's got to be about the relationships of the business. So it's incumbent upon leadership to make sure that is cascading down. So if there's that mid-level leader that you're reporting to is not living the values of the organization, communication channels need to be established so that people above that individual are taking the responsibility to coach that individual, he or she, up or coach them out.
I also want to add, we manage tasks and things and we lead people. And when Sam and I are meeting with corporations and we're a room of identified leaders, where there's some that have the leader title and there's others that have the manager title, our first question is, who in here is a leader? And a few hands, or majority of the hands will shoot up pretty quickly. Then there's some stragglers and there's some people that don't raise their hand because they have the title of a manager. And we want to know, first of all, do your people think of themselves as a leader? Because when you identify as a leader, I am a leader, you show up very differently. So we don't love the word mid-level management. We understand it. We understand why it exists in structures. But we really talk to everyone as a leader. And you have to first make sure that someone views themselves as a leader. And if they don't, you need to do what it takes to help them develop that skill and that belief in themselves. Otherwise, they will never step into any of this leadership.
Let me change the focus just a little bit by asking you guys how, if you're contacted by a potential new customer or you have a new client who wants to take your advice and start this process now, how do you help them assess where they are?
Well,
Tara?
Tara?
I love this question, Tom, because when we're working with corporations, everyone loves to see numbers, right? We want to measure things. We want to know that what we're doing is working. And when it comes to bottom line, when it comes to productivity, when it comes to profitability, those are easy things to manage and track because there's numbers attached to them. When it comes to something like culture, it's kind of more in the universe, right? How do you know if it's actually working? You can certainly feel it, but how do you measure it? And that's what I love about our main tool, which is the culture audit, which allows companies to do across the board, everyone from the people sweeping the floor to the CEO, getting their true feedback, which is anonymous, on several key indices that we can then work from to design programs around, development programs around. and then remeasure it again in 11 months or 12 months and actually see where we have made progress and see where the company has gone. Are they in the red, moving into the green? Are they just barely in the green and we want to get them fully in the green? It becomes a really awesome prescriptive tool to make real decisions from and then actually show an ROI, which is hard when it's culture based. Sam, I'll have you speak to that because this is your baby.
It's just a matter of a lot of times people go out, work from anecdotal information. Oh, yeah, we have a great culture here. People, they love it. Says who? And so, quite frankly, the larger the organization, the further the senior leadership is away from the people, they don't always realize what's going on. And the truth of the matter is, the organizations where the culture is weaker, the leader is even less attached and has a less of an idea of what's going on. And so many times when they get this 52-page executive report on the 15 indices that we measure, they're like, oh my gosh, I never realized that people felt this way. There's a reason for that. And part of that reason is why they feel that way, is the disconnect. And so if you're not getting data and you're trying to solve a problem, you may be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. You may be trying to solve the wrong problem. You may not know what the real problem is. So our philosophy is get the data and then prescribe. It's kind of like you go to the doctor, let me take an EKG and then tell me what I need to be doing. But don't prescribe medicine without doing the full analysis.
And with this analysis, can you then build upon areas that you might see either as weak, need remediation, perhaps employees have questions about, and move forward?
Absolutely. It becomes crystal clear once the analysis is done and you have the data. You know what the challenges are. You know what the solutions are. A good doctor knows which medicines or procedures to prescribe based on what's going on. And then it becomes a matter of now, but Tom, here's the key. You can prescribe the medicine, but doggone it, if I don't take that pill every morning, that bottle of pills ain't going to do me any good on the counter. And so can we prescribe what needs to be done? Can we identify it? Can we step someone through? You bet. But if you're not doing the follow-up, if you're not doing the aftercare, if you're not doing what you should be doing as a leader of the organization, it's not going to work.
I'd like to circle back to a place we started at, which is the greatest resource your company has, your employees, and how by having a culture of accountability, by having a culture of trust, by having the relationships you've talked about, it can weather through any of these changes, even if they're extraordinary changes, even if you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring in terms of something like a tariff. How does having that culture of accountability allow a leader to tap into that resource to get through all the change?
So I think when you talk about a company or an organization's greatest resource being their people, I know exactly what you're saying, Tom. I think sometimes leaders see that, though. They see that resource as they equate it to equipment or to financial resources, people are precious. And I don't particularly want to see people as a resource. I want to see people as human beings with needs. And as a leader, if I truly care about my people, I want to see them excel. I want to see them grow. I want to see them discover new potential that they never realized that they had, but maybe I see it in them and I'm leading them to that. And if I'm helping my people grow and be the very best that they can be, then they're going to get the job done. They're going to go beyond what might be expected. They're going to say things like, I work harder here than any company I've ever worked at, but I love it. When you know that the people that are leading you care about you, your family, care about you being your very best, you don't want to let them down. And so this is a relationship that's built. And so I'm hesitant about referring to people as resources. they're human beings. And if we as people see the people around us as human beings and help them be their very best and grow to be their very best as individuals, they're going to help us as an organization be our very best. So a leader at the end of the day really has a choice. Do you focus on the bottom line or do you focus on your people? And if you're focused on your people, then what happens is all of those people will focus on the bottom line. If you focus on the bottom line, then it's only one set of eyes. I believe it really does come down to focusing on the individual and helping them be successful, knowing that if you have 50 or 50,000, or as someone in one of our audience asked a question one time, 500 million people, it doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. Those people are going to take care of the organization because you're taking care of them.
And I just want to add, it's also looking at people holistically. We're not a leave it at the door kind of attitude, because what's happening at home impacts you at work. What's happening at work impacts you at home. Now, it doesn't mean you get to come in and dump all your problems and woe is me, but when you notice that someone on your team is just not showing up the way that they normally are, something's off, it's your responsibility as a leader to not make assumptions and not get just mad at them or frustrated with them, to go to them and say, hey, I noticed that something seems off or different. Is there anything I can help you with, or is there something going on? Now, they don't need to give you all the details, but this is a holistic look at your people, not just how they're performing in work. And if you don't know what's going on, what's important to them, what gets them out of bed every single day, then you don't know your people.
I love that you added that in, Tara. Thank you. It's kind of like the client that during the pandemic, an accountant said, Sam, no worries. It's business as usual. We're just all working from home. And I'm like, wait a second. No, that's not the case. He says, we are working from home. I'm saying that's great, but you realize that in those homes, in those houses, in those apartments, in those condominiums where your people are all living, it's not a single generation. And it's not even two generations. Sometimes there's three generations. And if parents are there with their kids, who's watching the kids when they're working? And if you're expecting to have the same number of billable hours during this time as if they were in the office, then you're kidding yourself. And you're not being respectful or responsive to the needs of your people. And so when you grant your people the flexibility to take care of their family and to get work done, which means they might be working at unusual hours, and it might mean that during this time of distress, of crisis, that they're working fewer hours, when they see that you're there for them, then you know what? Then Sunday afternoon, when there's a break in the action and the kids are taking a nap, they might squeeze in another hour's worth of work and get something done for a client. And so this is humans seeing humans as human beings. The leader that says, this isn't personal, this is business, is so out of touch, it's not even funny. Every conversation between two people, every issue, every decision you make is personal because you're dealing with human beings that have real needs.
Amen.
The volatility that we've seen, I think, Sam, it was you said that if you have a truly accountable culture, not only will a leader run through a wall for an employee, but employees will run through the wall either for or with their leader. How about the concept that we're in this together? I may hold the title, but we're in this together and we're going to get through this together. I'm going to ask you for your help, and you can ask me or give me ideas or suggestions. Is that a concept that you think works, that we're in this together?
Conceptually, that's kind of nice and sweet, Tom. But the reality is that becomes rhetoric that many leaders use that aren't in it together. It's like when a leader says, I want everyone to act like owners. Well, that's just ridiculous because they're not owners. Why? How are they going to act like owners? If you want all your people to act like owners, then make them owners. Make sure they own stock. Make sure that they benefit from the performance of the organization. And if you want to be able to say we're in this together, then doggone it, they better know that you're in it with them. Because a lot of times they're not. And we've seen CEOs that show up at midnight with pizzas for the tech team because they're doing a big tech switch over at night while operations are down and the tech team is there all night and the CEO shows up at midnight with a stack of pizzas. Then that CEO has earned the right to say, we're in this together. But I'm always going to go back to what my father said since I was yay big, and that is actions speak louder than words. Your people know if you're in it together or not because of how you've treated them, how you've shown up. And to me, when the leader says we're in it together, more times than not, it's a manipulative statement to try and get their people to do something for them. Got me fired up on that, Tom.
Tara, how about you?
I think it's important that we talk about this open door policy concept. Sam will tell a story about a leader that's, I'm an open door. I took my door off the hinges. We're like, okay, we get it. We get the symbol of it. But here's the truth. There are a mass amount of personality styles that will not walk through that open door with their question. You must go to them. You must be asking your people, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. What do you need from me, from us, to stay in alignment, to be able to still perform what you need to do? Do you have questions? Do you need other resources? You cannot rely on people just to come to you. You have to get out there and ask them, what do you need? What do you need from me to stay compliant? What do you need as a resource? Do you have further questions?
I think this is critical. I think you hit the nail on the head, Tara. I think that's the emotionally intelligent leader that realizes they can't just wait for people to come to them. They need to go to the people. And again, Tom, this is what you establish when times are good. You become known for this. Wow, Sue always wants to know what I'm thinking. That's different than Sue's always willing to listen to me when I talk. That's nice. But Sue always wants to know what I'm thinking is a whole different statement. And that's that going to the people. And again, this is what you establish when times are good, so that when we get to these times where whether it's tariffs or something else that's causing a disturbance, then the people know that you're going to come to them. They know that you want to know what they're thinking. They know that you're going to be there for them. You've created, this is the culture of this organization. And I don't care if you have 75,000 people. If I'm the CEO of a company with 75,000 employees, I want all 75,000 employees to know they work for me, that I'm living these values, that I am there, and that I'm not going to allow a situation where our values are not in place, and that they can come to me, but I'm going to go to them, and I'm going to show up all over the place, because you want that. It's all communication. When there's uncertainty, up the communication. People need to hear from you. They need to hear what's going on. They need to hear where you're concerned. They need to hear where you think this might impact the organization. They need to hear the things that you're considering and how do you attack the situation, whether it's with tariffs or with something else. And so Tara's dead nuts on. You've got to the amplitude on the communication. You've got to go to your people, because there's uncertainty, and when there's uncertainty, then that's when the fear comes in that we've already talked about, and that's when people freeze.
I want to take a moment to ask if any of our audience has any questions or comments. We've gone through a lot of material here so far, and I just wanted to give everyone a chance. If you have something to say, just raise your hand, and we'll definitely bring you on. If not, what I wanted to do, guys, was maybe ask you one last question.
There is a question in here from Andy, I see.
Question
in the chat. If I'm a CEO of an organization and the culture has been performed, how do results get shared with executive leadership? Next, how important is it, and how does executive leadership share the information with the rest of the organization? So thank you, Andy, and I appreciate that. First of all, obviously, when you do an assessment, that there is a report. We mentioned this. There's an executive report. It goes back to the senior leader that has initiated this process. It could be the CEO. It could be EVP of HR, but then I'd still want the CEO involved in this conversation. And senior leadership, there should be not just here's your report. There needs to be a conversation around the report, what it reflects, what it means, You would want to, in that conversation, find out, what does it mean to these leaders? How are they receiving it? What does it tell them? What's catching their eye? What do they see as the most important issues that they would want to take on? But then I think the second part of the question, Andy, is really where the brilliance is, and that is, what about all the people that took the time and made the effort to fill this out? It's critical that you report back to them, that they get this information. And a lot of times leadership feels they want to keep it a secret. No, this is what I look like, okay? I have the hair, I have the skin, I have the physique that I have. Would I like to be in better shape? If so, then I need to work out more and I can commit to that. But this is where I am today. I have to own that and be honest, and I have to know how much of this is my responsibility, which as senior leadership, it's probably all your responsibility. So go back to your people and share the information and tell them what's going on. But then not only that, you better take some action. The people need to see that their voice is not just heard, but that you act on it. Not all opinions are right. Not all opinions are constructive, but all opinions are opinions, and people want to see that you're doing something with that feedback. And when you do that, then when you come back a year later and you do the audit again so you can measure your results and see the growth and see where you still need to work, because we always need to get better, people are going to be even more apt to respond and give you even better feedback because you respected them and you went back to them with the information, and you also showed them what you did. So I would report back periodically. Hey, we've got some feedback on this. Here's what we've done. We've got some feedback on that. Here's what we've done. Open up communication and use the audit as a tool for that.
So I wanted to end by asking you both, because I don't see any other questions in the chat unless you guys do. Really, how do we tie this together on the importance of accountability in helping a corporation manage or get through volatility? And for today's topic, we picked tariffs, and we've explained why we did that. But as you said, Sam, it could be any volatile situation. It could be a pandemic. It could be, I used to live on the Texas Gulf Coast. It could be a hurricane. It could be a variety of economic issues. It could be a tax issue. It doesn't matter what it is. So I want to maybe end by asking both of you guys, what's the role of accountability in helping navigate volatility?
Tara?
Two words are coming to my mind, and I do see a comment just came in on chat. Proactive transparency. In times of volatility, as an accountable leader, I'm going to sit down after this webinar and I'm going to think to myself and ask myself, where am I or we not being transparent, and how can we be proactive about fixing that today? And not getting into overwhelm, but just picking one area, one or two things. If you are responsible for it, you can make the decision on how you're going to be proactively transparent about that, how you're going to communicate that. Or if you need your team to get on board, you're going to get a meeting set very quickly today or tomorrow and sit down and say, I've realized we are not being transparent about this, and I don't want to wait for it to bite us in the where. We're going to be proactive, not reactive. And proactive leader versus reactive leader is 100% part of being an accountable leader.
So this question came in. I want to attempt to answer the question and your question and the question that Debbie put forth, and I appreciate that. The question is, as an internal leadership coach, I've been put in the position of leading accountability, how you do that when it's not in the culture. Wow, that's a powerful question. And that, Debbie, believe it or not, that actually becomes a version of the most common question that we get asked. What do I do when my leader is not living the values? That's really the same thing. I'm going to give you two answers and answer Tom at the same time, I think. The first answer is you lead up. You lead up to the people above you. The senior leader is responsible for that culture. If accountability isn't in the culture, then it's the CEO's fault. It's that simple. The CEO always gets the culture they deserve. Because guess what? If Tar's the CEO and I work for Tar and I'm not acting right, Tar either hired me or she didn't fire me or she didn't whatever. But it's going to go back to the CEO. And if there's two people between us, it still is going to cascade down based on conversations and what the expectations that you set are. So you may be able to lead up, but many times you can't make that change. And it might be that you have to vote with your 2 feet, which means you go someplace where a leader understands what accountability is, where the leader understands that the values mean something both individually and organizationally, because those values define the culture. The greatest cultures that we work with organizations on a global basis where accountability is at the very highest, never, ever is accountability one of their stated values. It's not, because you don't mandate accountability. You model accountability as a leader, and then you inspire it in your people. So when the leader's accountable, something happens in that culture, and everyone else naturally wants to be accountable. So when you say that accountability is not in the culture, then I'm going to go straight to there's a good chance the leader's not accountable at some point to some degree, because he or she is allowing that to exist. So accountability, Tom, is at the very core of the culture, and it's at the very core of being positioned to handle turbulent times. The accountable leader knows how to communicate. They know that they can't wait for the people to come to them. They go to the people. They value their people. They build relationships, because accountability is a relational topic. They build relationships all the time that position them when they get in these turbulent situations, that their people will help them, the leader and the organization, rise to the top, handle the turbulence, and come out on the other side many times better than when they went in.
Sam and Tara, this has been a great webinar. You guys have given us so much to think about, and frankly, so much to talk about going forward. I know our listeners have enjoyed this as well. I certainly have enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing what we talk about next month.
Thank you, Tom.
Awesome. Thank you.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.